There are moments in life that seem like accidents, but aren't. A wrong turn, a sudden storm, a bird trembling on a wet doorstep that shouldn't have been there at all. Most people would have walked past it. Margaret didn't. And that one small decision unlocked a mystery her family had been living inside for over 40 years. Margaret Ellison was 63 years old, recently widowed, and quietly falling apart. Not in the dramatic way people talk about grief, not crying in the streets or unable to get out of bed. It was quieter than that. She still watered her plants. She still made 2 cups of coffee every morning before she remembered. She still wore her husband Gerald's cardigan around the house because it smelled like cedar and engine oil and something she couldn't name. Gerald had passed in February. By June, she was still figuring out how to be one person instead of 2. She lived in a small house on the edge of Clover Creek, Tennessee. The same house where she'd grown up. The same house her father had built with his own hands back in 1961. It sat on 3 acres of land that had been in the Ellison family for generations, surrounded by old oak trees and a creek that sang every spring. The land had value. Everyone in town knew it. And 40 years ago, something had gone wrong with it. Margaret's father, Earl Ellison, had been a careful man, a quiet man. He kept records in leather-bound notebooks and believed that a man's word was his contract. When he passed, back in 1983, he left behind a handwritten will, one that promised the land and a considerable sum of savings to Margaret and her brother Thomas. But the savings were never found. Neighbors said Earl had mistrusted banks. Thomas swore there was a hidden account. The lawyer at the time found nothing, and after years of searching, the family accepted the grief and let the mystery go quiet. Thomas had passed 2 years before Gerald. Margaret was the last one left who remembered. The storm came on a Thursday evening in late July. Margaret had stepped onto the porch to bring in her hanging ferns when she saw it. A bird, huddled against the base of her front door, soaking wet and shaking. It wasn't a sparrow or a robin. It was an African gray parrot, a large, silver-feathered bird with a vivid red tail and sharp, intelligent eyes. She stood very still. "Well," she said, "you are a long way from home." The bird blinked at her. It didn't fly away. She brought it inside. She wrapped it in a dish towel and set it near the warm vent in the kitchen, giving it water and a piece of cracker. It watched her with the kind of focused attention that made her feel, strangely, like it was trying to remember her face. She called the local shelter, the vet, even posted a notice at the general store. No one claimed the bird, so she named it Earl, after her father, and let it stay. African gray parrots are remarkable creatures. Margaret had read that somewhere once, but living with Earl made her understand it fully. He learned her name within a week. He mimicked the sound of the coffee maker, the creak of the 3rd porch step, the little tune she hummed while washing dishes. He was funny and strange and somehow comforting, a warm presence in a house that had grown very silent. But it was 3 weeks in when things became unusual. Margaret was sorting through a box of her father's old belongings, things she'd moved from Thomas's house after he passed, when Earl began to talk. Not mimicking, talking. "The floor," he said clearly. "The floor, Earl. Under the floor." Margaret froze. She turned slowly. The bird was perched on top of the box, watching her with those steady amber eyes. "The floor, Earl," it said again. Then, in a voice that made Margaret's hands go cold, a voice that was older, rougher, somehow familiar. Keep it safe. Keep it under the floor. She sat down on the kitchen chair and couldn't move for a long time. She told herself it was coincidence. Parrots repeat things. They absorb sounds. The bird had probably lived with an elderly man who talked to himself. Someone who'd seen an old movie or listened to too many mystery novels on tape. But she couldn't stop thinking about it. 2 nights later, she went down to the basement. Her father had built the house himself, and the basement floor was original. Wide pine boards, uneven with age, sealed but never replaced. She walked slowly, running the toe of her slipper along the boards, pressing gently. Near the far wall, behind the old furnace, one board gave slightly more than the others. Margaret got down on her knees. With a flathead screwdriver and both trembling hands, she pried up the board. Underneath, wrapped in oilcloth and sealed with electrical tape, was a metal box. Inside the box were 3 things: a leather savings passbook from a regional bank that had merged decades ago, a handwritten letter from her father, and a folded document, a secondary account opened quietly in 1979, never disclosed to the estate lawyer, listed under Margaret's full name as the sole beneficiary. She read the letter twice before she cried.
Maggie, if you're reading this, then you found a way. I always believed you would. The money is yours, for the house, for your future, for the children I hope you'll have. I couldn't trust anyone else with it. I couldn't trust myself to say it out loud. But I always trusted you. Your old dad. The account, dormant but legally intact, held just over $90,000. It took 3 months, a patient banking attorney, and several phone calls to the FDIC to access it. But it was real. It was hers. It was her father's love, sealed under a floorboard and waiting 40 years for the right moment. And Margaret believed, deep in her bones, that Earl the parrot had not wandered to her doorstep by accident. She believed he had belonged to someone who had known her father, someone who had heard those words spoken long ago in a voice that never let them go. The bird had carried them forward through time, through rain, through a chance encounter on a Thursday evening, and delivered them to the only person they were ever meant for. She never found out where Earl had come from. She stopped looking after a while. He lived in the sunny corner of her kitchen for the rest of his years, perched beside the window that overlooked the oak trees and the singing creek. He learned new words. Margaret, coffee, good morning, beautiful day. He lost the old voice eventually, the rough, familiar one. But she never forgot it. She used a portion of her father's savings to repair the house, to plant a small memorial garden for Gerald, and to quietly help a young family in town who had fallen behind on their mortgage. She didn't tell anyone why. She just knew what it felt like to be held up by something invisible. A love that had waited patiently, that had found a way through, that had never given up on reaching her. Sometimes the things we've lost aren't gone. Sometimes they're just waiting. Under the floorboards of our grief, in the voice of a strange bird on a rainy evening, for us to be still enough to hear them. If this story reminded you that love finds a way, share it with someone who needs to believe that today. The end.